sometimes, and particularly true for running or cursorial mammals like the cat, is that the limbs, which primitively splay out to the side, get brought in towards the body. And this is something that Shubin talked about in his book, and we've talked about a little bit already in lecture. They get brought in such a way that they swing in what's called a parasagittal plane, parallel to the mid-sagittal plane. And they do this in such a way that the elbows point backwards, so the forelimbs get rotated this way, but the hind limbs get rotated the other way, so the knees point forwards. Whereas primitively, they both kind of stuck out to the side. So that's just something to be aware of that's going on with the mammals. Associated with this, the ventral parts of the pectoral girdle get very reduced, because when you're splayed like this, you need big muscles that extend from the sternum out to your humeri to keep yourself from kind of falling down in between your limbs. But when the limbs are around like this, then they just support you directly, and you don't need to have those big stout braces of pectoral girdle to hold you up. So this is the pectoral girdle of the cat. You can see these big bones on top. What would those be? Scapulae. Okay. But ventrally, the clavicles are extremely reduced. This is typical of cursorial animals, and these are the clavicles, these two little tiny elements that are stuck on by a wire because they're embedded in muscle in the living animal, and they're not actually attached by a bony articulation to anything else. Okay. And the coracoid in a mammal is also very reduced. And it's this little process or prong that sticks out right there. That is the coracoid, this little tiny thing, and that's all that's left of it. And this is a mammal, so that is the, I'm pointing at the right thing, the posterior coracoid. All right. So that's the scapula, coracoid process. Glenoid cavity we'll come to in a moment. There are some terms that are used for the scapula. So we have here a dorsal border, cranial border, caudal border. Those I think are fairly intuitive. This big thing that sticks out from the blade of the scapula is called the scapular spine. Okay, and there's a muscle that lies above it. When below it, this area above it is called the suprascapular fossa. This one below or behind the scapular spine is the infraspinous fossa. Did I say suprascapular? I meant supraspinous fossa, infraspinous fossa. And the muscles that lie in there are the supraspinatus and infraspinatus muscles. We'll get to those after the practical. Okay. There's a subscapular fossa, and this is one that always confuses people because they're wondering where that is. It's just the deep surface, the inner surface of the scapula here is the subscapular fossa. And there's another muscle that lies in there called the subscapularis that will get you. Okay. The humerus. Okay. What part of the scapula is it articulating with? What's the cavity? Glenoid. Okay, good. And the part of the humerus that articulates there is called the head of the humerus. Okay. Hold on one second. I'm looking at my list of terms, which I have to keep here to keep myself honest. And I just realized I forgot one, or actually two terms. This is the scapular spine here. And the tip of the scapular spine, where it extends forward here, is called the acromion. Okay, we saw an acromion in a turtle. This is not really the same thing, but it's called the same thing just because it extends forward. And this is the acromion here. Okay. And in humans, if you look at a person here, where we do have a really good clavicle, here's the scapular spine. This is the acromion or acromion process, and that's what actually articulates with the clavicle, meets the clavicle. So that's in an animal that has a good clavicle, like us. That's a bony connection of the pectoral girdle to the rest of the skeleton. In a cat, there is no such bony connection. the scapula is entirely attached by muscle to the rest of the body. The whole forelimb is only attached by muscle. Okay. So that's the acromion process there. And there's actually a ligament that runs down to the clavicle. This little prong that extends out here is called the metacromion. And that's actually very prominent in the rabbit. If you take a look at the rabbit skeleton, they've got a really big metacromion. Okay. And that's just for muscle attachment. Okay, so that was just a little bit of an aside. I realized I had skipped those terms. Let's come back to the humerus. Here's the humerus. There's its head. This is its distal end. Am I going to really want to do this? I think I need to get an actual humerus. I brought my little cat kit here so I can get